We're going to take a look at Mayan civilization as part of our exploration of Mesoamerica. To begin, the time period of the classic Maya is from 250 to 900. During this time period, Mayan civilization consisted of independent city-states. So you can see in the map on the right here that there are many different city-states located in what is known as the Yucatan Peninsula. And this is a region that's located near southern Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. If we look at a satellite image of North America, we can get a better idea of where this is located. So if you look at the southern part of North America, down in the southern part of Mexico, you can see this region right here. That's the Yucatan Peninsula, and that's essentially the heartland of Mayan civilization. These city-states were also ruled by a god king. These were not just mere men, but they were men who actually believed themselves to be gods, and the people of these cities actually believed they could control the forces of nature. In addition, these cities served as centers for religious ceremonies and trade. So oftentimes they would have a central courtyard that would have pyramids, maybe a palace, but also maybe a weekly or daily trade center or marketplace. We're going to take a look at four features of Mayan urban centers. The first is that these cities often had dense populations. They could be anywhere from tens of thousands of people who lived in residential areas surrounding the city's center. They also were dominated by agriculture, so the surrounding land was irrigated, terraced, and cultivated to raise tax revenues to support the city-state. They also had ball courts. These are stone-sided playing fields which held religious and political significance. So much like we do sports today, their sports were very important to them, but they also were part of their religious and political life. Here's some examples of what ball courts might have looked like. So this one here at the top you can see is a stone-sided playing field with a field in the center of it. And there's a hoop up in the center left part of that wall. And from above, you can see how large this area is if you look at the bottom left picture. And on the bottom right is a reconstruction of what one might have looked like it had been painted at that time. They all had this hoop on the side of the wall as well. The goal of the game was to hit a ball through that hoop, sort of like basketball, but the game was a lot more like soccer. You had to hit the ball with your hips, not with your hands. Oftentimes, the winning team would be rewarded because of the political or religious significance of the game, but the losing teams would often be sacrificed. So it wasn't a game that you wanted to lose. Now, the final characteristic we have of these urban centers is monumental architecture. So most of these cities had giant pyramids, temples, palaces, and elaborate stone carvings that were dedicated to both the gods and the rulers. Now, one of the more famous of the pyramid structures is the Pyramid of Kukulkan. It's known as El Castillo, which is the castle in Spanish, and it's quite a monumental structure. Now, it was dedicated to Kukulkan, who was actually known as the Feathered Serpent. So as a god, he was important for a number of reasons, and he was known throughout the Mesoamerican world. But one of the most important reasons was that he brought corn, so he's associated closely with agriculture. Now, the pyramid is interesting because each side had a stairway with 91 steps. And there's also this platform at the top, and it adds up to 365, which is the number of days in a year. So again, if you take the 91 steps on all four sides, right, so 91 by 4, it's 364, plus the platform at the top equals 365. Now, why that's interesting is that equals the number of days in a year. So it tells us that the Mayan had a pretty good understanding of the solar year, and probably from their knowledge of astronomy and tracking the movement of the sun. So this isn't just a temple, it's also a calendar as well. Now again, if you take the stairways and divide the 9 terraces of each side into 18 segments, that also represents 18 months of the Mayan calendar. So you have to think of this thing as a sort of a giant calendar or maybe even a giant time machine. Now what it does is this pyramid reflects the equinoxes and solstices of the solar year. So you can see that the fall equinox is on September 22nd, and the spring equinox is on March 21st. And this is the location of where the sun would be at those two times of the year. Now, if I look at where the sunrise is on June 21st from 7 to 7:30 a.m., it's right at the corner of the pyramid. Over on this side, I can see that on June 21st from 4 to 4:30 p.m., I can see where the sunset is going to be located. It's right on the edge of the stairs. Now, the same thing if I look down here on December 21st for both, the afternoon for sunset and the morning for sunrise. The opposite happens. Now, why this is important is that the setting sun is going to cast a shadow of a serpent on the northern steps of the pyramid. And if you look closely at the edge of the pyramid on the steps, you can see it. It's located right here at the beginning of the morning, and as the day continues, you can see the shadow that's cast on the stairs makes its way slowly down to the bottom of the stairs until it reaches the very end of the stairway. And at the bottom is actually a carved snake head. So the shadow arrives at the snake head at the bottom of the stairs, and that marks the arrival of Kukulkan. And here you can see the head at the bottom of the stairway. So here's some more diagrams that gives you an idea of what's taking place. All right, so at the height of the day, the shadow is cast down the bottom of the stairs, and there's a real good close-up of what the head of Kukulkan looks like on the pyramid. Here's another shot, gives you another good example of how that works. And again, what that shadow's doing, again, I'll point it out. The shadow is located here on the edge of the steps, but it's actually being cast by the sun hitting the edge of the pyramid right on this corner right here. Now, the Mayan calendar is fairly complex. There's a 260-day religious calendar that consisted of 13 20-day months, but there's also a 365-day solar calendar that consisted of 18 20-day months with a separate period of 5 days at the end. So there's actually two separate calendars. There's a religious calendar, and then there's the ordinary calendar. Now, both were linked together like a meshed set of gears so that any given day could be identified in both cycles. So these gears would spin around the edge of each other, and that would identify which day it was in both the solar calendar, the 365-day calendar, and also the religious calendar. So the calendar helped identify the best times to plant crops, attack enemies, and crown new rulers. It also marked the end of a 5,125-year cycle as December 21st, 2012. Now that's part of that long count calendar. So a lot of people thought when that date arrived that the world was going to end. It's not that the world was going to end. It just meant that the calendar came to an end and a new cycle began, just like we do at the end of New Year's. The new year ends and another year begins. The world doesn't end with the end of a new year. Now in the 700s, there was warfare among various Mayan city-states. This warfare disrupted trade and produced economic hardship for people. And the population also began to grow, and over-farming damaged the environment. Food shortages, famine, and disease then followed. By the late 800s, many of these cities suddenly were abandoned. And then by the 1500s, the Maya were divided into small, weak city-states by the time the Spanish had arrived. That made it possible for the Spanish to conquer them because they weren't united as one single empire. So let's take a look at Maya power and decline. The traits of civilization are that they had religious beliefs and theocracy, and the strength leading to power was that it united their culture and loyalty to their king. The weakness leading to decline was that many physical and human resources were funneled into religious activities. We can see the same thing when we look at the traits of civilization for independent city-states. The strength leading to power was that there was a wealthy and prosperous culture. The weakness leading to decline was that there was frequent warfare between the kingdoms. And for the trait of civilization of intensive agriculture, we can see that the strength leading to power was the production of more food, which fed a larger population. The weakness leading to decline was that population growth created the need for more land, and as a result, they were overused their land and weren't able to produce enough food. So in many ways, the things that led to their strength that made them powerful are also the same things that became weaknesses that led to their decline.